This meeting is being recorded.
All right, Kimberly, we'll go ahead and get everybody opened up and we'll go ahead and get started. Good morning, everyone. My name is Michelle Lewis. It is so good to see you. We've got a nice handful of attendees today. And I'm very excited about this particular subject because sometimes it's an acronym that people don't quite understand because VERG isn't necessarily something you Google when you're looking for somebody's website, but it's the concept of the Veterans Employee Resource Group that we want to talk about. Many times as we get started in our recruitment efforts, this is going to be your first step to really introducing your company to veterans and allowing them to do a little bit of research on you and how you value them. So I'm very excited. Today we have two speakers. I will go ahead and do their introduction. We have Sadiq Holiday from Dominion Energy. I'm so excited. Both of these gentlemen are very active and involved and very supportive of NC4ME as we try to find veterans for their organizations and introduce them as companies that are well worth the time for a veteran to do their homework and research. One thing that NC4ME holds very dear is as many companies that are out there recruiting, we look for the ones that really do understand and appreciate the veteran talent. And if they don't, then we look to educate them on that. And once they do understand what that veteran talent is, they bring them on board. So Dominion Energy is one that's got a very nice opportunities for the veterans, and they appreciate them very much. So our first panelist, Sadiq Holiday, has more than 25 years in the HR world, specifically working now in the military and recruitment program coordinator for Dominion Energy. Sadiq also has over 18 years of service with the United States Air Force National Guard and is quite an advocate for the community as the military community as a whole. A conversation Sadiq and I were having just yesterday, as I mentioned, and I happened to say the word competition, and Sadiq said there is no competition when we're recruiting veterans. If we can put veterans in quality jobs, that's what I'm all about. And I just thought that was one of the most sincere things he could say, and it really solidified why I'm excited that he is on our panel. So Sadiq currently provides strategic leadership, HR leadership, consulting, and project coordination, focusing on building military programs and recruitment through Dominion Energy. And we'll talk a little bit more about that as we go, because we will show Dominion Energy's website on how they recruit military. Our next panelist, Mike Wood. Mike is with Cisco, and Cisco is a great partner of NC4ME. I think, and Kimberly, when I get her on here with her introduction, I think she will validate that. Cisco has been one of our partners from the beginning with NC4ME. Mike is a Virginia native, went to Virginia Tech, where he earned his commission to go into the Marine Corps as an officer, and then served 7 years in the Marine Corps as a supply officer, and then later an officer for recruitment in the military. Mike has transitioned out, and after about 12 plus years started working on his MBA. Is that right, Mike?
Right. Yeah, just completed it.
Just completed his MBA and recently started a sales position with Cisco in some of their complex initiatives that they do, specifically, again, being that advocate and speaking specifically on behalf of veterans and bringing veterans onto Cisco. So, ladies and gentlemen, those are our two panelists. I want to take an opportunity to introduce Kimberly Williams, the CEO of NC4ME, and let her do her introduction as well. So Kimberly, I'm going to pass it to you.
Michelle, thank you. I'm so excited because I'm going to learn something from this session as well. And I'm very excited about that because, you know, when we talk about Dominion Energy and we talk about Cisco, we talk about two very high performing companies. And one of the reasons that they're high performing is because they have an absolute and direct focus on bringing military talent into the organization. And as we know, military talent is definitely high performing talent. So with that said, Sadiq, I appreciate you and what you do for Dominion. When we first met, And I got to hear about some of the initiatives that you were driving. I was actually very surprised at how far advanced you were with military talent recruitment and retention. So, and obviously a veteran employee resource group within your organization, how you identify those folks that served in the military and how they can help drive that focus is, you know, you guys, what you do is amazing. And Mike, thank you for serving on our leadership team for years and with NC4ME, and Cisco is truly our first partner. They were our founding partner. So Cisco's focus on military recruitment is obvious as you look at their high performance. I mean, their bottom line results are directly related to the veterans in some of the leadership positions, and we know that. And what you have done to identify your talent, your military talent in your organization, and utilize them as a resource to continue to attract and retain military talent is imperative to your success. So what I'm excited about today is we really got the two guys where, you know, boots are on the ground, right? And this is about how you put together veteran employee resource groups. In every company that I talk to, I simply say, you've got to start by identifying your military talent in your organization and using them to drive your success. And you two are a perfect example of that. So I'm really excited about today and what we can learn so that we can then share with other organizations across the state. I also did want to give a shout out. I noticed that Jeff Luttrell is on here, and Jeff is a big SHRM advocate, Society of Human Resource Management, a good friend of mine. And we really appreciate what Jeff does in his organization, Lorica as well, with what they do to drive military talent. So Jeff, shout out to you. Hoping to see you at the annual SHRM conference. With that said, Michelle, I'm going to stay silent, turn it over to you and let you guys go with it. Thank you both, Sadiq and Mike.
And thank you, Kimberly. So guys, let's just kind of get a conversation starter. I wanted to just share that the very first thing as I was preparing for this panel, I just started Googling ERGs, VERGs to see what would pop up. And I noticed there are all sorts of acronyms. There's a BRG, a business resource group. I know from my time as a military spouse, there's an FRG, family readiness group. And I knew what all of those were. And I had an idea what an employee resource group was. But when you add that V in front of that and you begin talking about a veteran employee resource group, let's talk about why that specific group of folks is somebody that you want to focus on and you want to recruit. So before we get started, I'm going to see if I can do a quick screen share. And if I can here, I'm going to open up your company's, let's see if we can find it. I thought it was here. Your company's links and where you have specifically began recruiting your military personnel. So let's see if we can get this. Okay, Sadiq, we're going to start with yours. So we open up and all I did was do a search of Dominion Energy and military. And as I began looking at this, I noticed you have videos on here that talk about connecting with military that maybe aren't necessarily 100% focused on just the recruitment of military, but the recognition of your veterans as well. So I wanted to make sure that people could see how you at Dominion Energy are honoring your veterans, are recognizing your veterans, are promoting careers within your veterans. And I noticed as I scroll through here, a lot of your veteran resource group on here seem to be have that background in the military. So could you tell us a little bit about Dominion Energy's recruitment efforts via your VERG through this website?
Correct. Thank you. So number one, I want to say thank you and good morning to everyone on the call. This is a privilege and an honor to support our military family and extended military family. We use our Veterans Resource Group to really show pride and support to the military. Number one, transition is such a challenging thing for a lot of veterans, but not all. When coming into a company, you know, you're going from, you know, strict military doctrine environment into more of a loose corporate environment where sometimes you can lose that sense of family. Then I'd say one of the number one keys is the onboarding process. When you come into the company, you receive a letter welcoming you as a veteran. Number two, you get resources to lead you to other veterans specifically throughout the entire company, across our entire footprint. So if you're a veteran who enjoys, the fun runs, if you're a veteran who enjoys volunteerism, if you're a veteran who really just enjoys shooting the breeze after work, fly fishing, we have all these opportunities, number one, to help onboard you and still give you a sense of family and community. On top of that, we have the opportunity to help veterans as they come in with acclimating to the business culture. It's really good to come in and have such a depth of veterans who have been here 1 year all the way up to, say, 30, 40 years in the company to really help lay out what a day in the life looks like, or what a career progression path looks like at Dominion Energy, or if you would say in corporate America. And this just really helps a veteran with that anxiety of transitioning. So that's just one of the key points of the transition process, using the Veterans Employees Resource Group to onboard, as well as a sense of community on your first day or your first week with the company. You're on mute.
Sorry about that. I wanted to make sure everybody saw Dominion Energy's link, so how they recognize that. Mike, I'm going to switch over to Cisco's military veteran programs and just kind of scroll through. And while I do that, would you kind of talk through Cisco's thought process and some of the important components and the why Cisco thought this was important?
Yeah, excuse me. Sadiq said quite a bit of information that I agree with 100%. I kind of categorize it into 4 areas. And first, why do I categorize it? So I am Cisco's Global Veterans ERO, we call it ERO, Employee Resource Organization, recruiting pillar lead. So basically, I interface with our recruiting team on behalf of the veteran community. So with that said, what I try to remind our recruiters is something that Sadiq just said, is that veterans often, they served because they want to contribute. So they want to find a organization that they can continue that contribution. That mission is important to them, but also they're a fish out of water when they get out of the service. So they need that tribe, they need that community to welcome them and help onboard them and translate, just like Sadiq said. And then what we try to do at Cisco, and what we try and communicate on this page, if you were to scroll back up, there's an area that says, you can go all the way to the top, it's fine, where it says develop your skills or pursue your career. We're trying to coach the veterans that there's a couple different options for them, especially in a high-tech industry like Cisco is. Maybe they need to go get some additional skills, and here are the veteran programs that we invest in to help you develop those skills. Or if you already have those skills, here's the pathway to pursue specific roles at Cisco. So the ERG helps advise our recruiting team on, how those groups may differ and who to consider for what, because, much like every other, diversity group, we want to be able to see, veterans want to be able to see ourselves in the company and see people like us at the company. But what becomes a little bit unique with the veteran community is that recruiters don't always understand the resume. That language they use may not necessarily be clear. So we try to focus in on how can we help you prepare to pursue that career. That's stage 1. Stage 2, how can we help educate our recruiting team to help you navigate the job search. So hopefully that gives you a brief overview.
Excellent. Very, very good. Mike, you said some language that I was kind of annotating. You referred to it as a tribe. And I think that that's very important. Both you and Sadiq recognize that bringing veterans in, and Kimberly has said this time and time again, I've heard her say, if you bring 1, then you bring 2, then you bring 4, then you bring 8. For folks who may not have that understanding of the value of bringing the veteran, because often they don't understand that they transition into into that civilian company skill set. There's a mindset that could be out there that says, well, they know how to do it in the military, but do they know how to do it in our company? And I think Dominion Energy and Cisco, both via your websites, you're showing them how the two connect and how they can just easily transform from the uniform into the company, wearing the company logo on their chest as well. Recently, Kimberly and I talked to a gentleman who was really having a hard time recruiting veterans. And Kimberly opened up and began searching his website and noticed there was no recognition, nothing at all that stated they were a veteran friendly or even interested in seeking veterans in their company. And that's the first thing she brought to his attention. This gentleman made a comment that said, well, we don't recognize our temp workers and we can still get them. Why do you think, and this is to both you, Sadiq and Mike, why do you think that it is important to specifically recognize veterans throughout this veteran resource group? Is it to really give them the attaboys, or why do you think it is so important to recognize a veteran when you're trying to recruit versus any other talent out there that's seeking a position? Sadiq, you want to start?
Yeah, I'll start. And mine is just cultural. I think it's culturally appropriate to applaud those that have volunteered to sacrifice their lives for America's freedom. Simple as that. Also, I think it's appropriate just to say thank you. We're in a society where a lot of times we don't talk to each other. We don't recognize good deeds. I think anyone that has volunteered to step into that great unknown, which is the possibility of war and not coming home, to make sure that, again, America has the freedoms that we enjoy. I think that's just, a little simple recognition. And, I think it goes a very long way. When veterans come home, they don't know what the stigma is. They see some of these news articles. It was very challenging for our Vietnam sisters and brothers when they came home to some of that backlash. I really think it's important to let people know that, hey, we stand with you. We're proud of you, and your service is recognized. And you want to come into an environment where you're accepted. You don't want to go work for an employer who doesn't value the hard work. Let's just talk about the work ethic of the veteran, the safety ethic, the culture, the integrity, some of those things that, when we're looking for a company, we want something that at least mimics the core values that we have in the military. So a lot of times you'll see the most high performing veterans are in companies which have core values that mimic the militaries across all the branches.
Mike,
And to build on what Sadiq just said, I agree with all of that. What I think really needs to be considered is your overall diversity recruiting strategy, because if you think about it, if it's race, ethnicity, gender, the veteran community, you need to make sure that you're representing that group to attract that group. And I think that's something that everyone on this call already knows. I think you just need to remember that veterans see it the same way. If they don't see a company that they can identify with, or that have people that may be like them and have that shared experience, that it may not even pop in their Google search. I mean, I would say the average veteran, let's be honest, it's an overwhelming transition. So they go on the internet and they search military recruiting programs. So if you don't have that program, one, you may not even be seen. If you are seen and you don't have that representation, then I think that you may not attract, especially in this competitive landscape. That's extremely important. And ERGs can help with that. EROs, ERGs. The key takeaway, I think, from this panel should be that your ERG helps with, augment that recruiting effort, augment that, what should our message be to the community? That website was complete ERG project. We advised the company on how to build that together and put that together, what veterans need to see, things of that sort.
When you say we, Mike, are you referring to your recruitment team, or are you referring to the veterans embedded within Cisco?
Yeah, good question. Now, I know every company is a little bit different. So Sadiq, you may be exact opposite, but here at Cisco, we actually don't have a veteran recruiting team. Okay. What we do have is we have veteran programs that may have funding from the recruiting team or whatever the case is. but they're really spearheaded by volunteers within our employee resource group. So that's both a good thing and a bad thing. It's a good thing because it gives us the opportunity as an ERG to really make an impact on the business. One of the goals of an ERG should be to get your employees engaged so that they can, want to be here, for lack of better words. It's more than just work and more than just collecting a paycheck. However, the bad thing is that obviously we have our day jobs. So the way I approach my tasks in the ERG is, maybe I spend an hour a day on it. And that's for me to build into my time, which obviously, if things are pressing on the day job front, that may slide. So sometimes these projects take a little bit longer at Cisco. However, by keeping our ERG heavily engaged, we're always looking at it from the candidate's perspective and the employee's perspective, and not just, let's say, the corporate perspective. So that's kind of the way we balance it.
Sadiq, what about you when composing and building that communication with the veterans? How did Dominion Energy, or what has their focus been?
So I'm going to piggyback off of Mike first, and before I forget this point, I just want to give a really shameless plug to SHRM. I would say everybody on this call should write this down. This is the SHRM in connection with the Psych Armor Veterans at Work certificate. Is probably the most valuable piece of SHRM certification I've seen in the past recent years, not to discredit anything else. So going back to the VRG, we had all of our veteran employees, if they were willing, as well as our entire recruiting team and talent acquisition and available to HR to review the Veterans at Work certificate through SHRM with the Psych Armor. We have the same challenges that Mike discussed with Cisco. We don't have a dedicated group of veteran recruiters. What we do have is a group of talented and skilly or trained recruiters and HR personnel that understands the life cycle of the veteran, from transition to what the nomenclature on the resume is going to look like, how to assist them with behavioral interviewing. And then we also train our Veterans Employee Resource Group across our entire footprint. So when they're in the community doing volunteer work and they run into a veteran and they say, hey, I would love to work for Dominion, where do they put that referral? They know about, a variety of our jobs, skills trade jobs to our professional jobs. So again, when we're in the community, when we're doing our, National Guard or our reserve duty, and we're speaking to veterans that are transitioning or looking for some other great corporations to work for, they understand Dominion Energy as a business, Dominion Energy as a veteran-friendly company, and then also what the VRG looks like, the Veterans Employer Resource Group looks like, from the focus on Dominion's business, the focus on employee development, how the veterans serve in the community, and then again back to that recruiting component, which every veteran knows that they're a recruiter. So every veteran Dominion employee also knows that their job is to recruit high talent veterans and bring them into the company.
So I love that. Every veteran knows that they're a recruiter. So if we were to kind of focus on, we have such a vast audience on this panel. Some may have VERGs and they're just looking to improve them. And some may want to start one. They have not ever had a VERG. They don't really know where to begin with that. What would be the one point of advice you would say to a small company, a small organization that is wanting to start that initial veteran recruitment? Do you have any advice that you would share with them in that? Go ahead, Sadiq.
I have a volunteer. And I'm volunteering to assist you. So I helped Altria, I helped Philip Morris, I helped Capital One turn their affinity groups into veteran employee resource groups. So we are very skilled at partnering with companies of any scale. If you only have 2 employees and you want to start off grassroots and you really want to make sure that you get that foundation built correctly, we can help you start your resource group from there. If you're a really large company and you're saying, oh man, we're all over the place, how do we streamline the process? We have a couple of best practices that we can share. Again, is to make the veteran community stronger. So this information for Dominion, we give this away willingly and freely. We're also willing to volunteer with community projects. or with recruiting projects. So if we need to do a career fair in the Carolinas and your veteran employee resource group would like to connect with Dominions, we love to have you. Or if you're a company that, again, doesn't have one, but we're going to be present in your locality and you want to see what that veterans resource group does in the community on the ground in recruiting, then, come to the event and say hello to us, talk to us, and see what we do boots on the ground.
That's fantastic. Mike, what about you? Do you have a point of advice you would share with our audience?
I don't think I could do it in 30 minutes is the best way to put it, because, it's a complicated topic. Everything Sadiq said is absolutely correct. But it depends on your circumstances so heavily, right? So I worked at a military recruiting firm for 12 years after the Marine Corps. So I worked with companies that might be looking to hire one veteran for a specific position. And now I work at a company that's 70,000 employees, and our ERG is the number, I think our number 3 ERG in size and volume. So what my point is like, there's so many options in between. I think number one piece of advice is just socialize the idea with your employees, because you may find that you've got that individual that is super motivated to jump on board and take the lead as an additional duty. Additionally, I think after socializing is looking for how can you scale that message, partnering with veteran service organizations like NC4ME, and there are many others that may be applicable for your circumstances to help you, not do it all, or not reinvent the wheel and do it all on your own. So I think if you've got that good internal core group that's willing to really, step up and help you, lead that ERG and then partner with some of those organizations. The one piece of advice I would say on the negative side, I guess, to be careful of is sometimes our ERG members, they want to turn it into more of a social club, and that's important. They want to go play golf. They want to go have a happy hour. Those things are valuable, but resources are limited. So we need to really have a good strategy in place for how do we want to apply our resources for the year? What are our key objectives? Is it just to be a social organization, which it's not at Cisco, or is it to impact the recruiting team by educating them, scaling things with them, things of that sort, which it is. So just keep that in mind. Make sure that you have good volunteers, partner with good groups, and then have a strategy of what are you actually trying to achieve.
Absolutely. Excellent. So we've kind of talked about your companies and how you guys have focused on your ERGs, your VERGs. We've talked about how we can create those, how you can share some of those resources. Let's talk about the why. Why is it important that we bring veterans into our company? Why is it they would be a standout candidate over anybody else? Is there a specific reason that Dominion and Cisco specifically look for that population of folks? Could you share any ideas in that?
Mike, I'll let you go first this time.
I mean,
I've got my answer,
you've been going first. It's okay. 100%.
Okay.
I'll start. I think first, and again, I'm going to give you a little bit of the corporate line. We're committed to full spectrum diversity is the bottom line, right? However, then if you were to dig a little bit deeper and to say, like, how does a veteran differentiate? At Cisco, sometimes it can be tough because some of our positions are very technical. And if the veteran doesn't have the right certifications or right experience, it just doesn't apply. That's why we've created this pipeline of training programs and apprenticeship programs to help upskill that veteran community. And really, it's applicable to the broader community, not just veterans, but with veteran targeted pathways. But I think once you get into those positions that are maybe, general enough or aligned enough to the military background, what we consistently hear from our managers is, that kind of extra effort, that initiative, that drive, let's call it the soft skills. Mm-hmm. They may have never had a customer sales conversation before. However, they are so driven to be successful and to be part of a team because that's the environment they come from, mission-oriented, team-oriented, that, and again, we're talking on the average, right? There's always exceptions, but that they're going to maybe be slow to catch up at first, but they're going to onboard faster and ramp quicker than the average employee, and then they just keep on running. So it's more about the long-term potential, even though up front the manager may have to do a little bit more training, a little bit more translation. So hopefully that gives you an idea. It's more about that initiative, drive, soft skills in that regard.
Absolutely. Sadiq?
I think that was an amazing answer, Mike. So, keeping diversity in focus, because this is huge. What we've done is we've looked at, the military installations across our footprint and have really broke down what the MOSs are for those specific groups. So if I need to fill 50 entry level to mid-level skills trade jobs, I know exactly where to go to find heavy machinery. I know where to go to find, prime power. I know where to go to find. A lot of people say, "Oh, I'm just infantry," and I'm like, actually, you're not. You're an expert of topographical maps. You're an expert at range finding. You're doing your job in extreme environment very safely. So we can bring you into our culture with just those skills alone. As an electrical and utility business, we're mapping everything. We're doing jobs in a safe manner, and we have a lot of programs like Mike mentioned that are training programs. So we're going to give you a good entry point. I don't look for entry level jobs for veterans. You've already passed the entry level component. That was basic training. We want to bring you in to bring value to you, to your family. And then when you look in the mirror, you're like, yeah, I did it. Secondly, we also have carved out some special niches. We are finding that we're getting more senior level officers, which sometimes get missed in the transition program because they're looking for such a large salary. So we have a couple programs now where we're looking, to see how do we place a director, how do we place a project manager into a job, how do we sensationalize that resume across our leadership teams to say, hey, let's have coffee with this individual to see if this person can fit into an innovative group, if this person fits into operations, where will we put them? So we're doing what we can to really break down the military as a whole. And then within those diversity components we're trying to fill, we're looking for that diversity of skill. We're going to get the ethnicity, we're going to get the race. And now we're trying to find the right skill to I would say to honestly innovate America. As far as we are as an energy company, everything in the world plugs in. We make your iPhone work. We make your Tesla work. And that's where we are. And then again, with Cisco, we can't do it without integrated software and some of these other IT components. So it's really trying to put the veteran in the right space to capitalize on innovation in America. So even when we're in installations, when we don't have jobs, we're talking about where we're going in the next 1, 5 to 10 years. So as that veterans looking when they're transitioning out, they just met a buddy from a VERG that they can communicate with for a couple of years while they're in getting a transition. They've met someone on our recruiting team that they can talk about the different variations of their resume. And then they just really have a good experience with a company that is, very veteran friendly.
Absolutely.
Michelle, I want to say one more thing that Sadiq said that kind of clicked a light bulb. When we talk about diversity, and I know this group, again, we're talking to professionals that already know this, but just to reiterate the point, diversity of race, ethnicity, gender, all those things extremely important, and military is intersectional in that regard. It's a very diverse candidate pool, but that diversity of thought is something else that managers seem to really like quite a bit. Is because that veteran on the team, you'll see them in the first few weeks, they're kind of quiet, they're listening, they're trying to understand what's going on. And then they'll say, well, this is similar to a situation that we faced in Afghanistan. And then next thing you know, they can come up with a new solution, working with the team that just comes from this base of knowledge that no one else on the team has. So I think the key to add into all this thought process is finding those leaders in the organization that maybe they have the bandwidth to do the technical skill training or the job skill training, and that would value that diversity on the team to balance out, the way that their team's going about solving those innovative problems that Sadiq was just referring to.
Absolutely. And thanks for adding that. Sadiq, over in our chat, one of our attendees wanted to confirm, you said it was the SHRM Veterans at Work certificate. Is that
right?
correct?
And that is right, and that is through Psych Armor. So if they Google Psych Armor, Veterans at Work certificate, it should pop up. And a lot of people have it on LinkedIn as well. So if you look at that on LinkedIn, you can find that. But it does give you SHRM CT points, and it is, it's free as
And it's
well.
free.
And it's just really good. It helps. So having a Veterans Employee Resource Group, we get hit with a couple other things that maybe a couple people on this call may get later. You have a veteran who's having an issue with his VA appointment. So they may say, hey, how do you let a veteran get off of their VA appointment? So that goes around the company a little bit, or someone having an issue with post-traumatic stress, or someone gets deployed, is there, they're concerned about the differential pay. Having a Veterans Employee Resource Group, you've got so many individuals that have been through this process, and, you have that great knowledge database of just, hundreds of employees. And then sometimes you have a smaller company and, one person has all that data, but you have a repository of information where within that group, you can really help figure things out before an employee wants to go and talk to their manager or go and talk to their supervisor. You just got a group of individuals, like-minded individuals, that you can work so many situations out. And then that also goes for career progression, salary negotiation, or even if you're looking at going to a different, type of business within your company, what are some of the other skills that maybe you're not using that you can possibly utilize to get a promotion or to make a lateral move.
Absolutely. I just wanted to make sure we were following in our chat. So something you said, Mike, that I think maybe people don't consider is the Veterans Employee Resource Group, your ERG or VERG, doesn't necessarily have to only be focused. And then this is why I thought it was important to show both of your websites. It's not necessarily focused on recruitment, but basically information about your company. Veterans can use this prior to transitioning to better prepare them to step out of the military more prepared to come into your organizations through some of the things you were sharing, some of the certifications that you share, some of the skill tests that you were talking about. And I believe, Sadiq, on your site, I think it said Troops to Energy. So there are other internship programs that maybe tie in that can educate the veterans. So it's not necessarily that you're only focused on the recruitment effort. You're focused on that forward thinking from a veteran's perspective, that they're using this and they're tying in and networking with you as well. So I wanted to pull in that word networking. When we think of VERGs, and specifically I pulled up your websites, what other social media aspects are you using to reach out to your veterans and educate your veterans to be interested in wanting to know more about your organization and your company outside of just that website?
Okay.
Go ahead, Sadiq.
I apologize, Mike.
No, you're good.
We use just the regular ones: Facebook, Twitter, LinkedIn. But on our website, is if you're visiting our website, you'll constantly see different stories. So we supported 100 homes for 100 vets. We support Blue Star Family. So you're going to see a lot of what we do in the community. Working with Paralyzed Veterans of America, and just some really more community-based work. I would say that's really the bread and butter of what we do within the Veterans Employee Resource Group. And then from those things, you're seeing the business aspect, Dominion's business on putting, family and community first. You're seeing the employee development piece within the volunteerism, because you're leading the project, you're operating the project, there's budget associated with the project. It gives you opportunities for visibility, more things to add to your resume. But it really goes back to that family. Like, you go to work to do your job, but you also want to be with a company that's a good steward of their resources in supporting the community.
Yeah, we organize our ERG around 4 pillars. We have recruiting, retention, business impact, and community impact. So when you talk about those other areas that are non-recruiting, sometimes it blends over. That networking topic you asked about can blend between recruiting and business impact, and a variety of other community impact. For example, we partner with an organization called American Corporate Partners that gives, let's talk about retention real quick, gives our Cisco employees that are veteran advocates an opportunity to be connected with veterans that are looking for mentors in private sector America. And it doesn't have to be, individuals in recruiting, and it doesn't have to be a veteran. It can be anyone at Cisco that just wants to give back and make an impact. And that's valuable for retention because, again, it's a way to get engaged at work more than just your spreadsheets and your emails and things of that sort. And then for business impact, we'll have some of our sales folks will call me up and say, hey, listen, I'm meeting with this customer. They really value veteran, give back and veteran, training opportunities. Can you educate me on what we have available and how can we kind of work with them to, blend our two programs together? Now, their goal is to sell that customer on our products and services, but they're also working to how can we deeply integrate with that customer in ways that are more impactful and more valuable than products and services. So networking can work a lot of different ways, I guess, business side and recruiting, retention, and then also, that community impact of just helping that veteran along the way.
Absolutely. So go ahead, Sadiq, I'm sorry.
So I just want to say with Mike, it's really important because Mike, you keep mentioning this, and this is really important. So with the strategic plan for your ERG, having the different pillars is very important. Dominion has the pillars as well. So it's the business focus, the employee focus, the community focus, and then we have the recruiting focus. So if anyone is looking at setting their ERGs up, having that pillar focus is very good to keep you streamlined, as well as to meet your business objectives. If you're going to set one per year or maybe two per year per specific pillar. And that's where you're going to find your teams who raise their hand to volunteer for, say, the business focus, or folks who raise their hand to volunteer for the community aspect. But each one is going to have, say, a chair, a co-chair, and then just a small cohort that's going to really put together all the structure. And then across the company, when you're looking for volunteers, that's where you would raise the flag and say, who wants to volunteer for this event on this date at this time? But, having a very strategic focus. Something else that we did at Dominion too, and I'll get to the networking, is we looked at if any company's publicly traded, we want the shareholder to know what we're doing with the money. So that's why it's so important to have the employee resource group have a structure, have an objective, a strategic plan. So when shareholders are looking at what are you doing with the money, you don't want another Enron scenario. Everything is accountable. Everyone can see what you're doing in the community. Everyone can see how the veterans are being promoted or they're being developed, how their development supports the growth of the overall business, and how the community outreach is giving back. So that's just to make sure that you are in a really nice structure. So if anyone is analyzing your company, if anyone is looking at what's going on with resources, they'll see that you're being a good steward of your company's wealth.
Absolutely. So what some folks may not realize, so my husband spent 30 years in the Army, and I grew up with a father that was a Army veteran, 23 years. And one thing that I noticed that the military instills is volunteerism. I watched many times as entire battalions would support community activities such as an entire Special Olympics event or something to that effect. But volunteerism is very strong, not only for the veteran, but for the military spouse as well. Often the military spouse develops some of their work skills through their volunteerism. And so I did want to highlight that as you talk about recruit, retain, business advantages or business impacts and other impacts, that is a culture that military members and their families come from, is being involved in their community. And so when they see a company that values their community and stresses that, it means something to them, and it is something that is very attractive to them. So I'm very appreciative that that is an important part, not just recruit the veteran, but to recruit the veteran and showing the holistic approach of every single company, be it a small mom and dad or a major organization. Kimberly, we're going to be closing in just a couple minutes. I do want to make sure that there's time for folks to add any questions into the chat. But Kimberly, I wanted to give an opportunity if you had any thoughts as we get to this open question and answer session.
I do. And I've been taking notes because I didn't want to interrupt the conversation because it was so valuable. And, it's interesting because Michelle opened up with that. We had a handful of folks. What I find very encouraging is we had 54 participants today. And these are people that understand the value of bringing military talent to the organization. And now they want to see, how do we get them and keep them, right? I heard one of the questions about why, right? Why we want to bring military talent to our organization. And I heard us mention SHRM several times. So I am going to just quote a couple statistics from SHRM Foundation that 65% of our veterans have some college education or higher. So that perception that folks are leaving the military without degrees is not accurate. And that also 68% of employers, we're looking at almost 70%. And this is through the foundation with SHRM. 68% of employers report that veterans outperform their civilian counterparts. And 57% of veterans stay in their jobs longer. I mean, if you are in HR like I am, and you're looking at recruitment and retention and bottom line dollars, that turnover costs, I mean, it's a no-brainer why you bring veterans into your organization. So we get that. So today was about, wow, we want to bring veterans in, but how do we make sure, one, we're doing it right? And I like the SHRM Veterans at Work certificate piece. Yes, everybody please do that. And I know Jeff Lutrelli's on the line, is supporting that. He's thrown that up in chat. But once you attract them to your organization because you put in a landing page that makes sense and you're showing that you value their service and you want to show them that you have programs in your organization, once you bring them on board, how do you then keep them? And so this discussion, I love Sadiq, you have a letter of welcome on their first day that they're a veteran. Thank you for coming to our organization. I love that. You look at Lowe's, which is another partner of ours that identify those veterans with the vests. I mean, that was an idea from the senior vice president who also is a veteran. So these little things that we do that make sense are important if we want to attract this high performing talent. With that said, I will close out and let you go with that. I want you to know that I also saw John King in chat. He's a great supporter of NC4ME. And he said, how do we get the word out to the transitioning communities? Here's the great news. New River and Lejeune here in Jacksonville, North Carolina, we are at their TRS seminars, particularly the retirement seminar, which Michelle instructs, along with getting all of our information to anyone that registers for TRS through an electronic method, right? With our links and our link and our documents. This is all brand new as of last month. So all those transitioning on Lejeune, New River, and hopefully soon Cherry Point will know of how we can connect people to those jobs. And we're still working at Fort Bragg, although we have a presence there. We want to make sure that we get to every transitioning service member. So with that said, I will close with just another shout out, Aaron Harper on Atrium Health, who's now moved to Veterans Bridge Home. Aaron, thanks for everything you do for our veterans. And then most recently, Fiona Baxter, she's the Associate Executive Director for NC State Industry and Expansion Solutions, and one of our new partners. We just met with her at UNCW recently, and they're going to be working with us as well on workforce across the state. So thanks to everyone, and please continue.
Absolutely. I did want to touch base with a couple of the questions that have been put in our forum. One of the questions was, how do you handle people like me, for instance, who have worked mostly in the medical field in leadership positions and do not have the technical certifications for technical work? Mike, would you like to take that one?
Yeah, I can start with that. I think that, I might need more information to really answer the question accurately, but I'll just give a rough idea. There are transition programs for someone coming from industries, different industries, to gain skills and experience. I shouldn't call them transition programs, education programs that you can still participate in. But usually what we do at Cisco is we look at where do we have roles that overlap. For example, we do have healthcare practice specialists that maybe their whole role here is to help sellers like me understand the healthcare industry, so that I'm not just trying to figure it all out from the beginning. But it's a tough question to answer. I think that where we're more skilled at is when someone's transitioning out of active duty. They're it's almost like they just recently graduated from college or an MBA, or it's a fresh start where they can take all these skills and put them to use, but they don't necessarily have a defined path where it gets a little bit tougher when you've been in industry for a while. But I would suggest that what we do is we look at those practice areas where your experience can make the biggest impact within the business. Oh, and I did want to say one more thing. Michelle, when you spoke about military spouses, and thank you for military spouses and supporters of all types. Those are the most engaged individuals in our ERG. Our spouses and our family members are more engaged than the veterans themselves, which, I would like to work on my peer group to get them more engaged, but we rely so heavily on that group because they are so active. And they are the majority of our mentors that we have with, our veterans transitioning out. So we have a group within our ERG that is our military spouse advocacy group. So just so you keep that in mind as well.
Making sure we get these answers. Folks, are there any other questions? If you want to add them into our question and answer area, and then we have about 4 or 5 more minutes, we can close out. We had some great comments. Folks are talking about being in the hospitality fields, being in the agricultural fields. And I will tell you that NC4ME, our goal is to be a resource, and we connect with the great folks that you're listening to today. We don't try to go out there and have a go it alone. ACP is a company you mentioned, and we actually partner with ACP. We do work with the Soldier for Life. We work with the Marine Transition Organization, and we simply try to be a network of all the wonderful resources. Now, I will admit that we kind of screen the resources we use, because if we're going to put them out there for veterans, we want to make sure they're reputable and they have the same intent to help the veterans. And so there are a couple companies out there that go it alone, but NC4ME does a very good job. I'm a little biased in that regard, but I'm also personally invested because I do come from a long line of military. Everybody within our organization, from Kimberly, who's got a young daughter who's serving, to the rest of our team who has either served, has been a military spouse, whatever regard, we are very protective of our veterans. And so we try to work with organizations who have that same vested interest. And I love that Sadiq, Dominion Energy, has such a vested interest in our veterans. And Mike, Cisco is the same, and that you promote some of those outsourced resources. And like Sadiq, like you said yesterday, there is no term of competition when we're talking about putting veterans in the right places for the jobs. Something I did want to highlight as well that was mentioned, NC4ME does a very good job about understanding veterans are not bottom of the barrel kind of candidates. Sadiq, I think you mentioned this when you said they're already coming into the workforce, educated, experienced, and ready to go. And so we do look for companies that are going to appreciate that and highlight that and utilize that talent. I'm making sure we've got any other questions.
Yes,
I do
yes,
see. I do see several folks want to get in touch with you guys, Sadiq and Mike. So if you will share with us whatever comfort level you want to share, and then NC4ME can connect folks. Go ahead, Sadiq.
I saw 2 questions. One from Meredith. She's advice for smaller companies trying to get into break into veteran initiatives, including recruiting. So Meredith, I'm gonna give you guys my email address so we can have an offline conversation, because it's gonna be longer than 2 minutes. And then someone else asked, what's the most important when helping veterans transition to the workforce? I found telling the truth is the most important. When I'm speaking to veterans, I specifically ask them, what salary do you need to make sure that we can take care of your family? Also, does your spouse have a master's? We found that so many of the military spouses have higher degrees than the veterans. Let's go ahead and get the spouse placed as well. We do really good with placing spouses into opportunities as well. And then it's about quality of life. Let's talk about the 4 seasons here in Virginia. Let's talk about North Carolina. Let's talk about what happens when we strip away your BAH or BAS. Let's talk about if we pull away your medical. What do we need salary-wise to make sure your family is complete and doesn't miss a step? And then once we have that, then we try and determine the career that's going to make sure you have a real good opportunity of sustaining and maintaining the quality of life for you and your family. So I start with, let's tell the truth. Let's get all the numbers out, and then let's find the best opportunity for you and your family.
Absolutely. NC4ME a couple months ago did a leadership forum on corporate culture. And I think that corporate culture ties right into what you're talking about, Sadiq. Let's understand what's important to you, the veteran, and let's make sure this is going to be a win-win opportunity, not a winner take all. And often our veterans, they look for, there's an acronym that I use with them. They look for a job that is challenging. They look for often a job in a certain location. They look for a job that may have the opportunity for them to professionally advance. Obviously, they need the salary component, and then they look for security within a job. And so often, if we can have those discussions with our veterans and see if we have that match and that balance, regardless what the company is, if you can do the challenge, location, advancement, money, and security conversation with veterans, you'll often find that you get the truth, just exactly like you said. And the beauty of this is, Sadiq, in talking about our military spouses, there is a statistic out there that shows 31% of military spouses have higher education, as in a bachelor's, and out of that, 15% have even higher than that. They're going into their master's or even their doctorate degrees, but many have certifications and are very loyal to companies. And that's something that folks should consider. Recruiting veterans is one thing, but the beauty of recruiting a veteran, when you have that win-win conversation like you were talking about, Sadiq, is a veteran will stay with you. They are loyal to an organization and company. And so that is, recruiting is one thing, retention can be even more. So Meredith, I think that we have touched base on those conversations. The last question we have is, what is the most important thing when helping veterans transition to the workforce? One last point of advice, if you could give one thing, as both of you have served as veterans, and as you transitioned into the civilian workforce, what do you think the one point of advice you would give to our transitioning veterans to help them be successful? Sadiq, you want to go ahead and start us?
I would, number one, say leave your ego at the door. Put a lot of energy into your emotional intelligence training. Listen, be an active listener, and then be decisive when you're having conversations about the decisions that you want to make that benefit the business. I don't oftentimes use the word I or me. I use the word us and we in pretty much all conversations.
Mike?
I think I would have an objective in mind, and I say that's coupled with networking. And maybe a better way to say it is, what's most important to you? A lot of people, when they get out, they think, well, I'm a major in the military right now, so I need to make this much money. Sadiq was just talking about that. Is that what's most important to you? Because if you tell me that these other factors are more important, maybe you need to be flexible on that, or maybe your price is too low, right? So whatever the case is, we need to you need to understand what's most important to you, and then talk to people, network with people to learn more about that objective. And is it feasible? And can you get there? And how do you get there? Things like that.
Fantastic. Kimberly, any closing thoughts?
No, just thank you. Sadiq, thank you. Mike, thank you. Thank you for everything your companies do, because you definitely are setting the standard, and we appreciate it.
Absolutely. Gentlemen, this has just been such a pleasure. I have so enjoyed this panel. I will tell you that you're two of my favorite people, and I don't just tell everybody that. So thank you so much, and I appreciate it. I hope you have a wonderful rest of your week. Attendees, thank you. I did put in the chat your SHRM Professional Development Credit ID number. So be sure to go, and if you would like to get a professional credit for attending this session, that is in the chat box. If you've missed that, feel free to email me at mlewis@nc4me.org, and we will be able to connect with you. Folks, thank you again for joining us. I hope everybody got some great information, and I hope you have a wonderful week. Thank you.
Thank you. Bye-bye.